NBC News is reporting that the news that Trump has selected Matt Gaetz to be the country's attorney general is being met by astonishment inside the Department of Justice. One DOJ official called it, quote, truly stunning, and another labeled it, quote, insane. Another source, quote, I'm struggling to find words, end quote. And another, look, he is uniquely qualified. How many other prospective attorneys general had previous experience as the subject of a criminal investigation? There's that. Joining us now, a former top official in the National Security Division at DOJ, David Loughman's here. I don't want to be glib about the Department of Justice. It's been sort of the apple of Donald Trump's eye since the moment he became president. Actually, even before, during the transition, the national security officials traveled up to Trump Tower, where he lived at the time, tried to brief him, told him about some sort of unflattering things about him. And he's had the intelligence agencies, the Department of Justice, the national security agencies in particular, in his sights to sort of tear down and remake in his own image ever since then. What is your thought about Matt Gaetz as sort of the rational conclusion of a second go at it for Trump?
Well, Nicole, if you're not going to be glib, then I will. This is really a vomit in your mouth moment for alumni of the Department of Justice and for people around the United States who care about the rule of law. The Justice Department is the cornerstone of the rule of law in our country. And this nomination reflects the crudest contempt and disrespect for the rule of law, the Department of Justice as an institution, and for the thousands of men and women across this country who every day strive to carry out their mission to represent the people of the United States and the rules of the United States Constitution and bring justice around this country.
Well, I don't know that you will find an anchor who's covered more earnestly the failed efforts by the Department of Justice under two presidents to hold Donald Trump accountable. And I think that an honest look by all those people vomiting in their mouth has to include a look at how Robert Mueller failed to hold Donald Trump accountable or to clearly say that he should be indicted for the 6 acts of criminal obstruction of justice. And Merrick Garland failed to ever turn his sights to Donald Trump's role in the deadly insurrection until after the congressional probe. Is that part of the calculation for the very, very, very serious and important and respected folks who have the same sort of universal reaction to Matt Gaetz?
I don't know. Look, he's bent on retribution and vengeance. He still carries a grudge over the initiation and conduct of the investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election, which I helped oversee until Bob Mueller was appointed. The president-elect in his public statement announcing the Gaetz nomination, said that Gaetz would help bring about the de-weaponization of the Department of Justice. If he's confirmed, it will be precisely the opposite. He will turn the Department of Justice into a petting zoo for the new president. And it's just going to demolish morale within the department. I can only hope that, my former colleagues do, certainly what I tried to do for a long time and stand pat, hold your ground, continue to do the right thing as you see it under your oath, day in and day out.
What do you think the reaction will be when Trump asked the department to prosecute John Kerry? Jeff Berman writes about this in his book, former Trump pick for the to serve as U.S. SDNY, U.S. attorney during the first Trump presidency. He rejected some of those political prosecutions and sent them back to Maine DOJ, where they were farmed out to other more compliant offices. What does that process look like with someone like Matt Gaetz in charge of the department?
Well, it depends. There's going to be political appointees who are appointed to U.S. attorneys' positions, to positions heading each division of the department. Those are political appointees. In my former division, the National Security Division, only the Assistant Attorney General was a political appointee, although his deputy subsequently became political. But the line attorneys, the trial attorneys within the department, assistant U.S. attorneys around this country, they are nonpartisan public servants, and there will be a revulsion against doing anything that they feel is a partisan politicization of the criminal justice process in service to a tyrant.